hello. Wait, hello, hello. Welcome to part 6 of Fear and Trembling by Kierkegaard. Let's just jump right into it. Problemata. Preamble from the heart. An old proverb pertaining to the outward and visible world says, "Only one who works gets bread." Oddly enough, the saying doesn't apply in the world to which it most properly belongs, for the outward world is subject to the law of imperfection. There it happens time and time again that one who gets bread is one who does not work, that one who sleeps gets it in greater abundance than one who labors. In the outward world, everything belongs to whoever has it. The outward world is subject to the law of indifference, and the gentle of the ring obeys the only one. Oh, one wears it. Hmm. Whether Nardian or an Aladdin, and whoever holds the world's treasures does so however he came by them. It is otherwise in the world of spirit. Here there prevails an eternal divine order. Here it does not rain on the just and the unjust alike. Here the sun does not shine on both good and evil. Here only the one who works gets bread, and only one who knows anguish finds rest. Only one who descends to the underworld saves the loved one. Only one who draws the knife gets Isaac. He who will not work does not get bread, but will be deluded, as the gods deluded Orpheus. With an airy figure in place of the beloved, deluded him because he was the tender-hearted, not courageous. Deluded him because he was a lyre player, not a man. Here it has no help to have Abraham as one's father, or 17 centuries of noble ancestry of anyone who will not work. Here one can say what is written about Israel's virgins: he gives birth to the wind, while the one who works will give birth to his own father. Conventional wisdom aims presumptuously to introduce into the world of spirit that same law of indifference under which the outside world groans. It believes that it is enough to have knowledge of large truths. No other work is necessary, but then it does not get bread. It starves to death while everything is transformed into gold. And what else does it know? There were many thousands in the Greece of the time, countless others in later generations who knew all the victories of Miltiades. Miltiades Miltiades. But there was only one who lost sleep over them. There were countless generations that knew of the story of Abraham by heart, word for word. How many did it make sleepless? Now the story of Abraham has the remarkable quality that it will always be glorious, no matter how impoverished our understanding of it. But only for it is true here too, if we are willing to labor and be heavy laden. But labor they will not, and yet they still want to understand the story. One speaks in Abraham's honor, but how? By making it a commonplace. His greatness was that he was so loved, that he so loved God that he was willing to offer him the best he had. That is very true, but best is a vague expression. In a word, in a word and thought, one can quite safely identify Isaac with the best, and the man who so thinks can very well puff at his pipe as he does so, and the listener can very well listen well can oh my god and the listener can very well leisurely stretch out his legs. If the rich young man whom Christ met on the road had sold all his possessions and given them to the poor, we would praise him as we praise all great deeds, but we would not understand even him without some labor. Yet he would not have become an Abraham even if he had given away his best hand. What is left out of the Abraham story is the anguish. For while I am under no obligation to money, to a son the father has the highest and most sacred of obligations. Yet anguish is a dangerous affair for the squeamish. So people forget, notwithstanding they want to talk about Abraham, so they talk, and in the course of conversation, they interchange the word Isaac, and at best, everything goes excellently. Should someone in the audience be suffering from insomnia, however, there is likely to be the most appalling, most profound, tragicomic understanding. He goes home. He wants to do just like Abraham, for the son is certainly the best thing he has. Should that speaker hear the word of this, he might go to the man, summon all his clerical authority, and shout, "Lonesome man, dregs of society, what devil has so possessed you that you wanted to murder your own son?" And this priest, who had felt no sign of heat or perspiration while preaching about Abraham, would be surprised at the man. He would be pleased with himself, for he had never spoken with such pungency and fervor before. He would say to himself and his wife, "I am an orator." Orator? All I've needed was the opportunity. When I spoke about Abraham on Sunday, I didn't feel at all carried away. If the same speaker still had the some slight excess of wit to spare, he would surely lose it were the sinner to reply coolly and with dignity. It was, in fact, what you yourself preached on Sunday. How could a priest get such an idea into his head? And yet he did so, and oh my God. And the mistake was only that he hadn't known what he was saying. Why does some poet take up situations like these instead of the stuff and nonsense that fills comedies and novels? The comic and the tragic converge on each other here in absolute infinity. The priest's speech was no doubt laughable enough in itself, but became infinitely more so in its consequence, and yet that was quite natural. Or suppose the sinner had acceded without protest, acceded without protest to the priest's reprimand, or that zealous clerk had gone happily home, happy in the knowledge that his effectiveness was not confined to the pulpit, but was above all evident in irresistible power of his ministry of souls, inspiring the congregation on Sunday, while on Monday he, like a cherub with the flaming sword confronting him, who by his deed would not put that old proverb to shame, which says that the world never practices what the priest preaches. Should the sinner, on the other hand, have convinced his situation would be tragic enough, he would no doubt be executed or sent to the madhouse. In short, he would have come into an unhappy relation with so-called reality, though in another sense I should think that Abraham made him happy, for he who labors does not perish. He who labors does not perish. Regardless. Oh, Eternal Fuzz. Let me look. Let me just put a bookmark in that. What is? Oh, Internal Fuzz. There we go. Oh shoot, 0 monthly listeners. Ooh, 0 monthly listeners. Okay, okay. You know what that means? Let's just. All right, I'll listen to that later. Maybe it's something. But we also have chicken nuggets on the side. What explains a contradiction on con what explains a contradiction like, oh my god, like the speakers. It is because Abraham has acquired propriety rights to the title of a great man. So whatever he does is great, and if anyone else does the same sin, a crying sin. If so, I have no wish to take the same. Oh wait, I have no wish to take part in this mindless praise. If faith cannot make it into a holy deed to murder one's own son, then let judgment fall on Abraham as anyone else. If anyone hasn't the courage to think this thought through, to say that Abraham was a murderer, then surely it would be better to acquire that courage than to waste time to understand speeches in his praise. The ethical expression for what Abraham did is that he was willing to murder Isaac. The religious expression is that he was willing to sacrifice Isaac. But in this contradiction lies the very anguish that can indeed make one sleepless. And yet, without the anguish, Abraham is not the one he is. Or perhaps Abraham simply didn't do what the story says. Perhaps in the context of his time, what he did was something quite different. Then let's forget him. For why bother remembering a past that cannot be made into a present? Or perhaps something to do with the ethical aspect slipped that speaker's mind, the fact that Isaac was the son. For if you simply remove faith from a nix and not, there remains only the raw fact that Abraham was willing to murder Isaac, which is easy enough for anyone without faith to um, imitate, without the faith, that is, which makes it hard. For my own part, I don't lack the courage to think and think a thought. Wait, For my own part, I don't lack the courage to think a thought whole. No thought has frightened me so far. Should I ever come across one, I hope I will at least have the honesty to say this. Um, this thought scares me. It stirs up something else in me so that I don't want to think of it. If that is wrong of me, I'll no doubt get my punishment. If I conceded the truth of the judgment that Abraham was a murderer, I am not sure that I would have been able to silence my reverence on him. But if that is what I myself thought, then I would presumably keep quiet, for thoughts like that are not to be intimidated to others. However, Abraham is no illusion. He hasn't slept himself to fame. He does not owe his celebrity to any whim of fate. Can one speak unreservedly of Abraham, then without risking that someone will go off the rails and do likewise? Unless I dare this to speak quite openly, I will simply keep quiet about Abraham, and above all, not diminish him, so that by that very fact he becomes a snare for the weak. If one makes faith the main thing, that is, make it what it is, then I imagine one might dare speak of it without that risk in this day of ours, which can hardly be said out to do itself in faith, and it is only in respect of faith that one archives resemblance to Abraham, not the murderer. If one makes love into a fleeting mood, into a pleasurable agitation in a person, then one lays traps for the weak. Then talking of the achievements of love, of course, everyone has momentary feelings, but if those were to be used as reasons for doing the terrible things that love has hollowed as immortal deeds, everything would be lost, both the achievement and those misled in this way. Honestly, the lemonade is good. It should be all right. Then to speak about Abraham. The great can never do harm when grasped in the greatness. It is like a two-edged sword bringing death and salvation. If should fall to my lot to speak of him, I would begin by showing him a devout, God-fearing man. Abraham was deserving to be called God's chosen. Only such a person is subjected to such a trial. But who is such a person? Next, I would describe how Abraham loved Isaac. To that end, I would beg the support of all good spirits in making my speech irreverent as is the love of a father for his son. I would hope to describe it in such a way that not many a father in the realm would dare maintain that he loved his son thus. Woe! Yet if he did not love Abraham, all thought of offering Abraham would be a temptation. Here we already have plenty to speak. Oh my God. Of for several Sundays, so there is no need to rush. The result, if the speech does justice to the theme, will be that some fathers will simply not want to hear more, but be happy for the time being if they have really succeeded in loving as Abraham did. Should one of them, after having caught the greatness of Abraham's deed, but also the appallingness of it, venture out on the road, I would saddle my horse and ride along with him. At every stop before we came to the mountain in Moriah, I would explain to him that he could still turn back, could the misunderstanding that was called to be tried in conflict of this nature, could confess that he lacked the courage so that if God wanted Isaac, God loves you, but not enough to save you. In his word, who is this Dominic Fike man? Sit him twice as hard. Cause in the end, I know nobody else coming. Cause I keep praying and praying and praying. If it's meant to be, then it will be. You know, to me. If it's meant to be, will be. Whoa, 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 whoa. What? Bad trade. Okay. It is my conviction that such a person will not be disavowed, but can be blessed along with all others, though not mine, even in times of faith. Would such a person not be judged in this way? I knew someone who once could have saved my life had he possessed the magnanimity. He said plainly, I see well enough what I could do, but I don't dare. I'm afraid that later I shall lack strength, but I shall regret it. He was not magnanimous, but would anyone cease to love him on that account? Having spoken thus and moved my audience so that they appreciated the last something of the dialectical struggle of faith and its gigantic passion, I would not be guilty of error they might impute to me by thinking, well, he was or he has faith in such a high degree, it's enough for us to just hold on to his coattails. For I would add, by no means I have faith. By no means I have faith. I am shrewd. I'm a shrewd fellow by nature, as oh my god, such as always have great difficulty making the movement of faith, though I wouldn't attach any importance in itself to a difficulty in which, by overcoming it, brings a shrewd fellow no further than most ordinary and simple-minded person has already reached without the difficulty. I love. Oh wait, after all, love after all has its priests and poets, and occasionally one hears a voice that knows how to keep it in shape. But about faith, one hears not a word. Who speaks in this passion? Oh my God! In this passion's praise, philosophy goes further. Theology sits all painted at the window, courting philosophy's favor, offering philosophy its delights. It's said to be hard to understand Hegel without understanding Abraham. Why, that's brag tell. To go beyond Hegel, that is a miracle, but to go beyond Abraham is the simplest of all. I, for my part, have devoted considerable time to understanding the Hegelian philosophy. Believe also that I have more or less understood it. I am rash enough to believe that those points were, where despite the trouble taken, I cannot understand it. The reason is the Hegel himself hasn't been altogether very clear. All this I do easily, naturally, without it causing me any mental strain. But when I have to think about Abraham, I am virtually annihilated. I am all the time aware of that monstrous of that monstrous paradox that is the content of Abraham's life, I am constantly repulsed, and my thought, for all its passion, is unable to enter into it, cannot come one hair beddeth further. I strain every muscle so sight to catch it. I strain every muscle to catch sight of it, but the same instance I become paralyzed. Jeez, man, how long have we been reading for? Oh my god. Now this is the last page, man. I am not unacquainted with what has been admired as great and magnanimous in the world, but my soul feels an affinity with it, and is in all humanity convinced that it was in my cause to that the hero strove. Oh, sweet. Yet by what? Hero strove, I am contemplative, his striving, I exclaim to myself. Now it's your affair that's at stake. The hero I can think myself into, but not Abraham. When I reach that height, I fall down, since what I've offered is a paradox. Yet I by no means think that faith is therefore something inferior. On the contrary, that is the highest, at the same time believing it dishonest of philosophy to offer something else instead, and to slight faith. Philosophy cannot and should not give us an account of faith, but should understand itself and know just what it has indeed to offer, without taking um, anything away, least of all cheating people out of something by making them think it is nothing. Oh, that's actually really, 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 really cool. But it should understand itself and know just what it indeed has to offer without taking anything away, least of all cheating people out of something by making them think it is nothing. That's a cool line. I am not unacquainted with life's needs and dangers. I do not fear them, and I go to meet them undaunted. I am not familiar with horror. My memory is a faithful wife, and my imagination, unlike myself, a diligent maid who sits quietly all day at her work, and in evening can speak so prettily for me that I just have to look at it, even if it isn't always landscapes or flowers or pastoral idyllists she paints. I have seen horror face to face. I do not flee in fear of it, but know very well that, however bravely I face it, my courage is not that of faith, and not at all to be compared with it. I cannot close my eyes and hurl myself trustingly into the absurd. For me, that is impossible, but I do not praise myself on that account. I am conceived that God is love, convinced that God is love. This thought has for me a pristine lyrical validity. When it is present to me, I am unspeakably happy. When it is absent, I yearn for it more intensely than the lover for the beloved. But wait, what? I yearn for it more intensely than the lover for the beloved. Mm. But I do not have faith. This courage I lack. God's love for me, both in a direct and inverse sense, inconsumable with the whole reality. I am not a coward enough to whimper and moan on that account, but neither am I underhand enough to deny that faith is something far higher. I can very well carry on living in my manner. I am happy and satisfied, but happiness is not that of faith, and compared with that is indeed unhappy. Jeez. Cool. Yeah, that's all I'm gonna do. Bye.